Do you believe in accidents? Hang on. Okay. Do you believe in accidents or coincidences? Do you know the difference? I'm Roach, Mark Roach, here to share some different perspectives with you. And today I have to follow up on some footage that I lost yesterday due to some audio failures. And I wanted to follow up and make sure I got everything complete that I'd prepared for the video that I made just yesterday. So, you know, I shared a lot of insights yesterday from people that I'd been speaking to recently. I think I also was responding to some comments that came in on the channel. Thanks for those. So let me start out by just trying to fill in the blanks of what was lost. And I have to make some comment, it seems, about accidents or coincidences. And, you know, there are some people that don't believe in accidents and they believe everything is you know, has some, you know, destined fate in it. And I think there are occasions where that's true. I'm not sure why this footage was left out, but anyway, it's been delayed and I'm going to try to bring it to you now. One of the comments that came to mind this week was about the gift of silence. We're in a society where everyone has a narrative. You know, we don't even watch sports, or I don't want to make generalizations, but most people watch sports and they tune in on TV and there's a narration going on, telling you what's happening, giving you the play-by-play. And when you actually go to the live event, it seems like an entirely different experience when you see it in person without seeing the replays. And in fact, they're bringing that into the stadiums these days on these giant big screens where they show the replays and the close-ups of everything. And you know, it just makes me wonder how good we are at making our own narrative for ourselves. Can you watch a sporting event? Can you live your life? Can you know, read the tea leaves, so to speak, about what's happening in your life and just count on your own system? Or have we become so specialized that we require a media person to give us the narrative about what's going on in society? And, you know, to be quite clear, going deeper, you know, in any editorial or any narrative that's taking place, there are a number of biases and focuses and that are taking place, and filters that are being implemented behind the scenes before the story or the narrative is being brought to you. So just bring that to your attention, because it's something that, as someone that's survived and recovered from trauma and continues to grapple with how I fit in with society, and also working with other people to try to help them realize how unique and special they are, and finding that they have a lot of power in creating their own narrative and their own view for themselves. And sometimes it takes going back to the fundamentals to let that happen, to develop all of your senses, you know, beyond the 5 that we're trained and that the narrative is all about. So the gift of silence can also be something that, and I've done this as a experiment with myself, and I stumbled upon it in acting, but then also have realized that there's several masters that use this technique to gain a greater awareness of their own senses, of their own body, of their own mechanics, because as language is formed, often that becomes a narrative from our childhood that places thoughts in a narrative and really occupies our focus. But there's a lot of other things that are going on around us and in our minds that if you use silence for an extended period of time, you may have to deal with some inner turmoil in keeping from speaking to others, and it may take some cooperation from those people around you, but in any event, you might think about it and look into this yourself or ask me some questions. I can give you a lot more information about the gift of silence that you can give yourself to expand your own senses and perceptions in life and even wire around some of the narratives that are really kind of, baked into the language that you picked up as a kid. So from that, there's another comment that I had about story being a false pathway, and that there are these mental constructs that come out through these narratives, and I'm just bringing this to your attention that a lot of times these narratives, may or may not have an agenda, but that's for you to examine. And the only way to really get clear on that is to get to ground zero, to, escape, any attachment or any identity to a narrative and then rebuild. Now that may be a lot for if you haven't been through trauma or had some accidents in your life that take you to this place. It may take some real discipline to get there, and you can't do it just by thinking about it. You have to actually spend time being quiet and allowing the stories to resonate and not grab a hold of all of those survival instincts that were baked into you in your childhood and in that early development. So that's something to consider. Another thing that I came across is the comment about in the Bible, there's a Sermon on the Mount where Jesus makes a number of statements that many people I hear saying are impossible. And I'd like to refute that because I think especially, the older, middle-aged and older people that are, in their 50s up to 100 or so can say, in looking back, a lot of the reasons that are given for not being able to do the things that Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount are because of the patterns of survival and the narrative that has been formed in society. And those things don't conform to living an exceptional life with many of the virtues that Jesus speaks to. One of them in particular comes to mind about really staying in touch or loving each other. And, there's a number of things that I can go into if there's some comments. Maybe I dive deeper into some of the Sermon on the Mount statements that many people feel are impossible, that I feel like with some maturity, they can become possible. And they can become aspects of your life that really enrich your life. And I'd like to explore that with some other people. If there are some of you that are interested, please shoot me an email or make some comments on here or a direct message, and I can follow up and expand on that with you and possibly make some more videos about that. So another thought is, how can we cease repeating what's in our biology? We're taking these patterns that we've been handed for generations, and you look around and you see many of the aspects of history are repeating itself. We've got two very primal wars taking place right now, one in the Middle East, one between Ukraine and Russia in Eastern Europe. And how can we transcend that? Well, that's something of a rhetorical question. I have some ideas about what that's about. And if you've been tuning into some of the mystic work that I've been sharing from Gurdjieff and Nicole, that's what that's all about, is getting in touch with aspects of yourself that are not directly responding to life or to circumstances or to other people or to the feelings that you're having yourself, not responding like a caveman or with the same old responses that we've been conditioned for generations and generations to respond with. And part of what I'm hoping is that there's a generation or two or three now that are older and are seeing into the old patterns that we've been bringing forward, and we can transcend that. And the transparency that we're seeing in life, as well as the using technology, and also the health that some middle-aged and older people have today, are bringing some vitality to those views that were once only shared on deathbeds. And now we're finding even there's a home for a lot of transparency in society, where people are talking about things that people used to hide in caves and not talk about. And so those mystics, those secrets, those things that, you know, people used to be beheaded for claiming that the earth was round because everyone was identified with it being flat. So I could say a lot more about that, and if you're interested in exploring that with me, let me know. I think that healing the body was another thing that I came across, because, you know, we're looking for quick fixes in our society. Younger people especially are looking for, you know, the doctor to, you know, cure an ailment, or, you know, we go to the drugstore and we get an aspirin or a Tylenol or Advil for this or that, and I'm not refuting, or, you know, even diet is a factor in many of our biologic conditions, and, you know, I'm not disputing the approaches that people have been taking, but I think it's smart to consider alternative approaches, or just, and I said consider, I didn't say go out and, you know, do doctors or alternatives. I'm not promoting this, because I think it's a decision everyone needs to make for themselves. But I have seen some real merit in looking and understanding what your options are, because I think our body is not responding as quickly as our heads create new narratives and new ways of using technology, for example. You know, we find ourselves in a much more sedentary lifestyle today. And so if you don't go to the gym, or if you lose your exercise aspect, then your body is losing its health. And I think it's important to consider mindfulness, for example, and I think this is a popular thing today, is for people to consider taking time for yourself, taking time maybe to meditate and consider how you're feeling, and take time away from the busyness of life. So I don't think I need to say a lot more about that, but I think there's also a sense of confusion that is bred into people and baked in early life that we can begin to deal with now. And part of that comes in from that meditation, the relaxing, the attention to our own bodies and what we're feeling. And then on top of that, considering some of the chaos that we've created with a mixed message. There's a mixed message that we're given to conform to society, you know, get education, you know, choose a career, be a professional, maybe, get a mortgage. And on the other hand, we're seeing what's really happening in the world and in our bubble here in the United States is that there's a lot of polarity, there's a lot of conflict, and there's a lot of cries about justice or injustice, and there's maybe a misproportionate privilege that you're observing within different sectors of society. So how do you reconcile all of that? And a lot of the narrative that that's baked into us, has this, almost like you're serving two masters. Like part of it is, orientated toward being true to yourself and your feelings and your own morals and values. And then you go out into the world and you see a competitive landscape and you see that honoring that maybe that inner life is not rewarded or not even, considered, maybe even scrutinized in some avenues or channels of your life. So someone else had mentioned something about, I always think it's important for us to realize how naive we can be when we look out at the world and think everyone is feeling and looking at things just like we are. There is, although we do have probably the best bubble on Earth, consider that China has its own way of living, which is a lot different than ours, and we generally know very little about it here in the U.S. But they have about 4 times the population that we do, and they do have an order, and that they bring from their government down that does monitor everything that people are doing. And as we bring artificial intelligence in, I see some comments and narratives developing that are indicating that could be a similar fate that we have here in the United States. So let's try to bring some wisdom into our bubble, and let's do this the right way. Technology has some benefits, and it also can have some detriments. Someone also mentioned the concept of self-attunement, which I hadn't really heard that term before, but I wanted to share I did quite a bit of research on it. And briefly, it suggested that self-attunement is a holistic practice that involves being deeply connected to your emotional, physical, and mental states in a way that promotes healing, growth, and greater self-awareness. It requires ongoing mindfulness, compassion toward yourself, and willingness to engage with all parts of your inner world, both light and dark. So thank you for that, because that's really what Transcendent is all about. And that's, just giving me another modality. And I think there is some literature and programs developed around self-attunement that may be for you. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.